Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I know it's been a little roller coaster with timing of the class, right? Last week was 6, and this week 7:45, and next week who knows when, right? We'll figure it out. We'll figure out a good timing for the summer, right? And then once we have it secured, we'll let everybody know the exact timing. But thank you for joining us. So this week's parsha is Parshah Vayakhel on page 516. So interesting, this year, usually the Parshah Vayakhel comes together with Pekudei, right? Vayakhel Pekudei. And that's actually the last Parsha in the book of Shmos. Right? But this year, Vayakhel is all by itself, lonesome, all by itself. Right? It is not together with Pekudei, which makes the Parsha much shorter. Right? And for a bar mitzvah boy, it makes it easier, where Vayakhel Pekudei is much longer. Right? Not that there's not it's not completely easy because it is less. There are some harder words in there because of Mishkan, and it's still not a short parsha. Right? There's still 122 verses in the parsha. Right? But it definitely makes it shorter than if it would have been together. Why is it separate? Right, and I'm not going to go into the whole discussion about this, but I just sort of give an overview. So there's a mathematical equation regarding how we do our calendar, as we know, right? We just look at myzmanim.com, right, or the luach you get from Shul or from whatever tzedakah organization that sends you one, and now they expect money from it, right? Whatever it is, we just look at it and we say, oh, okay, yeah, Purim was Friday, March 14th this year, and this and that, and Pesach is whatever, right? But actually, there's a whole mathematical equation regarding the lunar calendar versus the solar calendar, and Hillel HaKatan, his name was Hillel HaKatan, who lived at the tail end of the Tanaim era, beginning of the Amoraim era. Right? He realized that the Jewish people were going into exile, and to really sanctify the new moon, we sanctify it in shul, but to halachically really sanctify it, we actually need a basin. You need a courthouse, and not any basin like we might have here in town or other places. We needed the basin of the basin of the 72, the full basin, and it had to have rabbis that were anointed, got smicha, right? Not just from their local, shul, right? But the smicha actually from that was traditionally passed down for Moshe, and we lost that because sort of in exile, and we weren't able to continue, and only able to do that in the land of Israel, right? So we don't have that now, and he realized that the Jewish people are going into exile, and it's sort of going to lose that out, and therefore he and his Beis Din met, believe it or not, even without AI and supercomputers and any of that, he calculated, because there's also a mathematical equation, even though we sanctify with the new moon coming up, there is a mathematical equation, and he calculated mathematically up until the year 6000, and that's why our calendar goes up to the year 6000, right? He calculated and retroactively sanctified all the new moons, right, with his Beis Din. Halachically, there's a whole halachic discussion how he's able to do that. Fascinating halachic discussion, right? But he retroactively went ahead and sanctified all the new moons, and therefore our new moons are when we sanctify. It's really been sanctified by the proper Beis Din, and therefore the holidays could fall out on those months. And he calculated all of that. Besides that, it was a marvel. Unbelievable how they did that, right? And the different halachic discussions that come out of it. But basically, when they calculated that, based off the way the moons, the years are, and based off, excuse me, if there was a like last year, there was 2 others, right? And it depends on how it all works out, right? So it depends on how many weeks there are in that Jewish cycle, right? Because there's, in the secular world, secular calendar, there's 52 weeks in a year, right? But in the Jewish, as we know, it's never equal. It's never the same, right? As we know, Jewish time is a real thing, right? Jewish time means to say that every day is a different time, because every day the hour is a different amount of minutes. Right? There's always 12 hours in a day, right? But the hours always change because it depends on the sundown to sunset. Right? A very fascinating discussion, right? But that's how it is. So same thing with how many weeks in a Jewish year, right? Not every year, right, is there 52 weeks in a year. Rarely is there 52 weeks in a Jewish year because we have less days in our month, and it just thank you so much. Right, so therefore, depends on how many weeks there are in that year, depends on how many double parshios we have, because there's a few of them. Vayakhel Pekude, right? Achronos Kadoshim, right? There's some, there's a Tezria Mitzora, right? There's a few of them that are together. Why are these ones picked together? That's beyond the scope of this class. Fascinating discussion. Why were these ones chosen to be put together? And when we have some that need to be and some that not need to be, why are these ones put together and those ones not put together? Right? Interesting discussion and beyond the scope of this class, right? Something to think about, right? But whatever it is, for whatever reason, the amount of weeks that we have in this year, right? We are able to split Vayakhel Pekude, right? I think a few years ago, right? Based off how it worked, we actually there was no double parachutes. And that is like, I don't know the exact number, but every like 75 years or something like that, it happens. I don't remember the exact thing. Right? I'm sure you could Google it and find out. Right? Just make sure it's from the right place. Right? Right website. Right? But that's why these two parshas are split apart this year, because there was enough weeks that enabled us to split this apart. This is a very interesting thing to think about and to realize that, again, everything in the Torah has a reason. It's all connected. The calendar, it's connected to this, and it's connected to how many parshas we have and how many weeks we have. It's all interconnected, but just some food for thought. Any comments or questions? You go ahead, Bruce. Boris, can I ask you, can you go to that side? Do you mind moving to that side? It's just easier for me just to look in one way. Do you mind? Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it. I want to be able to see you, right, Boris? That's what we have. We have the calendar up until the 6,000. Right. So this is where the tradition comes that we know that Mashiach has to come by the year 6,000. Right? Calendar was created till the year 6,000. We're going a little off topic, but that's fine. We love going off topic. Right? These are fascinating topics. Right? I'm a big believer in going off topic. This is one of the reasons. But where does he get it from? Right? There's a famous Vilna Gaon. There's a Vilna Gaon that writes, and it's based off different Zohars and different things that I just heard it from the Vilna Gaon, that the 6 days of creation represent 1,000 years. It's based off actually a verse in Tehillim in Psalms where it says, Elef Shanim Kiyom. 1,000 years is like a day. Right, and it says for God, 1 day is like 1,000 years, right? Based off that, they say that every day of creation represents 1,000 years. And the Vilna Gaon goes and elaborates and shows how what was created on that day also represents how the culture of the world and the technology and advancement. And he says that's why the first 1,000 was much less advanced, or Stone Age as we call it, and then as it continues, and then when the final 6,000, when man was created, at the end of the 6,000, he actually writes this. He wrote this in the 18th century, in the 1700s, and he writes as we get closer to the end, because it says man was created in the evening, in the afternoon, so we're going to see that man's technology is going to start advancing. right? And this was before the the Industrial Revolution, right? But he says, and we'll see that, and he says, as we get closer, it's going to advance, and then we actually see that, right? That technology is advancing. We went to the moon, if you believe that, but okay, that's a different discussion, right? Just the technology, this and that, and you see, as we're getting closer, we feel like every second, as the famous saying goes, this you want to know when your technology is outdated, is when you take it out of the store, right? Nowadays, right? There used to be like, okay, you had a year or two to get a new, but now it's like the second you take it out of the store, there's already something new out there. Right. So right. So we're not right. So we're not saying good or bad. The Vilna Gaon is saying that this represents every 1,000 years represents every day represents 1,000 years, and you see, he says based off like what that day, he goes and elaborates on how advancements in the sea and advancements in other things, based off what was created that day. And that's another idea. And then he says 7,000 years is Shabbos, right? And that's going to be Shabbos, the Kula Tov, and that's going to be the days of Mashiach, right? And then after that is going to be utopia of only spirituality, right? So the 7,000 year, according to what the Vilna Gaon is saying, there's a lot that is talked about this, and we don't know everything exactly, but based off different Kabbalistic ideas, but 7,000 years is going to be like Shabbos. Shabbos is me'ein olam haba, right? We eat physical food. We are physical, but we still don't work, and we don't create anything new, and that's considered the days of Mashiach, right? We're still going to be based off Talmudic things. It's going to be we're still going to have we're going to still be in our bodies. We're still going to serve, but we're going to have everybody's going to recognize God, and everybody's going to want to bring sacrifices and do only good, or we're not going to have that Yetzer Hara, right? And then the 8,000 year, there is no 8,000 year, right? It's going to be just the Shema, whatever that means, right? So again, these are things that are a little beyond our scope of knowledge. That's another source of where this idea of 6,000 years come from also. So these are fascinating topics, right? We could talk about it. We could expand on this. We even started the parsha, right? And that's why I love going off topic and having some extra time, right? Because these are really good, because this allows us to expand our knowledge and expand our view on things. Okay, so let's now start the parsha. So Vayakhel, right? Vayakhel, Moshe says, Koladas b'nei Yisrael, verse 1, and Moshe gathered all the Jewish people, and he told them, these are the words that God commanded you, and then he speaks about Shabbos. Right, Shabbos Shabboson, right? 6 days to do work, 7th day to be Shabbos. The last verse is, do not make a fire in all of your dwellings on the day of Shabbos. So I just want to talk about this for a few minutes. Excuse me. Right. So Vayakhel, the Vayakhel means gathered, right? Assembled, right? Most of Vayakhel, and he gathered and he assembled all the Jewish people. Kol b'nei, so all the Jewish people. When was this gathering of all the Jewish people? So it says the Talmud, this is the day after Yom Kippur. Right, and this fits very nicely at the end of last week's parsha. If you remember correctly, we went through a timeline last week very quickly, and last week we went through the timeline of the 340 days that Moshe was up in Shemaim, and Moshe went up to Shemaim. There was Shavuos, which was the giving of the Luchos, right? We call it the giving of the Torah, but it was the giving of the Luchos, and Moshe went up to receive the rest of the Torah. He came down one day early because the Jewish people sinned the golden calf, which was Shivash B'Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz. He went back up the next day for 40 days, right, to ask forgiveness for the Jewish people. He came back down on Rosh Chodesh Elul, right, and that's the beginning of the month of asking for forgiveness. He went back up. And he went back up. This was the first day of Rosh Chodesh, the second day of Rosh Chodesh. He went back up to get the Luchos Shnios, the second Luchos, and he came back down on Yom Kippur with the second Luchos, and that's why it's the Day of Atonement. Right? Hashem said, Salachti Kedvarecha, I forgive the Jewish people, and the biggest sign that God said he forgave the Jewish people is by giving them the Luchos Shnios, giving them the second Luchos. That was the biggest sign that he forgave the Jewish people. Right? The very next day, is Vayakhel Moshe's Bnei Yisrael. Moshe gathered the Jewish people. Right? This Vayakhel is the very next day that what Moshe went and gathered. And this in the order of how things happen, this is when he told them about, right? The next verse, Vayomer Moshe Bnei Yisrael, verse 4. Moshe told the Jewish people, right? Zeh Davar God commanded, take for yourself truma. Anybody should give gold and silver and copper and all the different wools and all the different things that are needed to go ahead, all the famous gemstones, in order to build the Mishkan. Right? So even though we spoke about the building of the Mishkan before, but this is where Moshe commanded them and gathered all of them and told them about this beautiful project that they're going to do. Right? The first construction project, building campaign that the Jewish people had, right, was the day after Yom Kippur. And the commentaries want to know two things. Number one, and they want to know a lot of things, right? But two things that we're going to talk about, right? They want to know is why, first of all, does the Torah have to emphasize that Moshe gathered all the Jewish people? It's Kol Adas B'nai Yisrael, all the Jewish people. Yaakov Moses B'nai Yisrael, Moshe gathered the Jewish people, right? When it doesn't always emphasize Kol Adas B'nai Yisrael, all the Jewish people. And whenever the Torah goes in and emphasizes all the Jewish people, he made sure that women were there and children were there and everybody was there. This was something that everybody had to be there. Why was it important for Moshe to gather all the Jewish people? Let's gather people and let the word go. Hey, there's a campaign, right? So let's get it. Let's get that going. So that's question number one. The question number two is what was significant that it's a day after Yom Kippur? Like, hello, we just fasted Yom Kippur, right? Most have fasted for 40 days. I don't know, but whatever it is, you would just don't Yom Kippur, right? Take a day off, just chill, and the next day go ahead. Like, really, the day after Yom Kippur, you have to now go start right away and then do this? And just chill and relax. What? Yes, that's true. They were holy, 100%. But just what's important for us to emphasize? It was a day after Yom Kippur. The next day, 2 days after Yom Kippur. Like, what's the important thing? So, the commentaries explain that the Farshim explain, and the two things really intertwine with each other. We're going to answer the second question first, and then we'll answer the first question. Answer to the second question, what's the importance of doing it right after Yom Kippur? Because this is really a life lesson in our day-to-day activities that we do things. As we just said, right? They were holier, right? They're holier. Why were they holier? Because they just had an atonement. They just had Yom Kippur. Moshe Rabbeinu just got to give them the second luchos. Says Moshe Rabbeinu in teaching Klal Yisrael this important lesson that when you have this level of inspiration, when you have this level of holiness, capitalize on it. The very next day, don't wait, it's the day. Capitalize on it. Go do something right away. Right? Go do something with this inspiration. Don't just let it peter out and be an inspiration or whatever it is. Or, oh my gosh, I'm so... No. Do something about it. Make sure you capitalize on that. You can't just go ahead and just, I'm inspired. Okay, wait, in 2 days I'll do something. You got to do something right away. And it is a tremendous lesson in life because we say we're inspired, this and that, and then what happened? Like, why did I change? Like, why am I still where I'm holding? Maybe change a little bit, but because we don't capitalize on the inspiration. Right? We dwell on it, and we think on it, and we have that whole family together. We have a family meeting about if we should do something, we shouldn't do something, and then we talk to our neighbors and our friends, and we put it on the WhatsApp group, right? And then before you know it, right, you've totally forgot about why you're doing all these things because you're uninspired anymore, right? You're uninspired anymore. So you got to capitalize. You got to do, and not only capitalize, you got to do an action. Right? Moshe gathered all the Jewish people, and that's why he gathered all of them. He said, everybody has to be here to hear this announcement. Everybody has to be here to be part of this because you are all just forgiven, right? You are all just received the second luchos. So you all have to be here right now. You all have to be part of this, right? Excuse me. And this is a tremendous lesson, right? That I tell people all the time, and I try to tell myself. I'm not always good at it myself either, but at least I still try to remember to tell myself about this. Right? That we have these inspirational moments in our lives. But if we don't capitalize on it, we don't do something, we don't do an action, we don't put it into something, it's going to peter away, and that whole inspiration is going to be gone. Right? And that's what Moshe is telling the Jewish people. And that's why he made sure that all the Jewish people were around. So that's one important lesson. The other thing, and we touched upon this a little bit last time, and I'm not, again, I just want to sort of, I don't want to dwell on it too much, but just sort of overview again. We learned from here, also from the previous parsha, that since why is the laws of Shabbos right before the building of the Mishkan over here again, is because we learn that the first of all to say that the building of the Mishkan, as inspiring and as great it was, does not docha Shabbos, does not annul the laws of Shabbos, and they could not build a Mishkan on Shabbos, right? And that's something important to remember. Even though you can bring a carbon on Shabbos, right? But only the carbon that is obligated for that day, right? You can't bring just a regular, if someone wants to bring a shlamim, just a thank you sacrifice or whatever it is, or even a chata sacrifice for a sin, you can't bring that on Shabbos. Only the ones that are obligated for that day. And remember, the building of the Mishkan, you can't, really? The building of the Mishkan, God's dwelling, like, come on, that's such an important thing. No, we can't start making our own calculations, right? And this is important. We can't start making our own calculations. And we so many times make our own calculations, what we think is inspiring and what we think should be important. And really, I'll be inspired if I do this, and I'll be if I go, right? We can't start making our own calculations, right? What God tells us to do, that's inspiring, right? That's what we're supposed to do. And of course, each one of us on our own level, each one of us on our own growth path, right? But we have to remember that. And I always use this example, and I've used it before in this class, right? And as parents, it's easier to give this example. If I tell my kid, right, to please go ahead and make their bed, right, and they go ahead and say, draw me a nice painting, right, I'm going to say thank you very much, but you're still being disrespectful and you're not honoring me because I asked you to do something. But look at this beautiful painting. I spent so much time. Yeah, Daddy, don't you love it? It's so beautiful. It's beautiful. It's great. But you still didn't ask me to, you just still didn't do what I asked you to do. And that is being disrespectful, right? And that's not building a relationship, right? The same thing with spouses, right? So many times we think we know what our spouses want, right? We don't think we know what our spouses want, right? But okay, right? Right? We pretend that we think we know, right? It's okay. I'm not getting myself in trouble here right now, right? But we have to try to understand what they want, right? Not what we want, right? Honey, right, for our anniversary, I just got this beautiful trip. We're gonna go camping, whatever. I hate camping, right, or vice versa. If she loves camping, you like to go, whatever, right? We have to, when we give someone something, we have to think about what they want and not what we think is cool and good, right? And it's the same thing with the relationship with Hashem, right? We have to do what Hashem wants us to do, right? And Hashem doesn't want us to build a Mishkan on Shabbos, right? Even though it's for His building, for His thing, but He's teaching us, and not everything that seems spiritual or seems cool or seems whatever, that's not always a spiritual way. That's not always a thing of building a relationship with Him. And therefore, He prohibited from building the Mishkan on Shabbos. Not only that, we learned the 39 Avos Malachos, the laws of Shabbos, we learned from the building of the Mishkan, right? So whatever, and the Talmud goes into this, right? And there's a great book, Sefer 39 Avos Malachos by Rabbi Ribiat, that goes into depth. It's a 3-volume, but he goes into how each malacha is connected to the Mishkan. Right, highly recommend to look at that if you have a chance. Also, he has great halachic discussions about Shabbos. Right. Well, I always tell people whenever they get into halacha, it's always should be a reference book to be able to know what to ask. Right, some things are pretty straightforward, but other things, always important because you also have to know what to ask. If you don't know enough, you don't know what to ask. But it's always good to have a rabbi that you could always ask your questions to, because there might be leniencies that might be appropriate for you, but he might not put it down. It might be stringencies that would be applied to you and he doesn't, whatever it is. So you always have to ask, but it's always good to have the knowledge to be able to know what to ask. But he goes into there of how each malacha, each prohibition on Shabbos, the 39, the main ones, are connected to the Mishkan. We learned that from here also. Since it's prohibited to build it on Shabbos, so whatever was made, whatever was around to be on Shabbos is prohibited to do on Shabbos. Okay, so now I want to go into something very interesting. We're going to turn the page, all right? Because again, it goes to the different stones and everything. If you go to verse 21, smack in the middle, by Shady. Excuse me. Sorry, just getting over like a cough and cold, so I apologize about that. So it says like this: "Vayavu kol ish asher nasa libo," right? V'chol asher nidvrucho osehivu trumas Hashem. Right? How does the article translate it? Every man whose heart was inspired him came, and everyone whose spirit motivated him, right, brought their portion to Hashem, right, for the work of the tent of the meeting place, right, what we know as the Mishkan, right. So the Mefarshim point out that the Torah now is sort of being a little poetic, right? It's using some nice words over here. Right? Every man that inspired his heart, right? And then it says, right? And whose spirit was motivated, right? The Torah usually doesn't do this. It says, the matanas. They brought the matanas. What's the Torah going into? And elaborating about these poetic and nice, the spirit of the heart, and then it's motivated, and these are heart inspired. These are nice things, but what's the Torah going into this? And the commentaries explain the different ones. Farsim say that no, the Torah is not. Of course, we know the Torah doesn't just add things just to make it sound poetic and sound nice, right? There's a reason for it, and the Torah is telling us that when you yavo kol ish, every person that comes, right, and nasa liba, and he lifts his heart. Nasa also can be lifted, inspired, but nosea is to carry, right? Nosea literally means to carry. So nosea liba, he's carrying his heart, means to say that he's opening his heart. He's doing things because he wants to do it. He's allowing his heart to be inspired, right? And not only that, right? And then it says, right? His spirit means to say that he's doing it with excitement. That's how one should bring Nediv Libo. That's how one should bring his Nedava, his gift, right? His portion to the Mishkan. And it's telling us that in Judaism, right, it's not just doing the action. Of course, we have to do the action, right? We have to do the action, right? We got to put our tefillin on, right? Ooh, do you have a tefillin mark, right? I remember in yeshiva sometimes, the yeshiva said, no, it's lift them, said, no, oh, okay, you put on tefillin today, right? Okay, I did, it was a little loose, right? Right? It's okay, so we go through the action, right? And we make a blessing, and we eat kosher, and we turn off our lights before Shabbos and turn on the ones that we need on before Shabbos, and we roll the Torah on. We go through the action. It is, and we talked about you have to do the action. And we spoke about this other times where Judaism is an action-based thing because it changes the molecules of our body, and we elaborate on that. But at the same time, the prophet says we can't be robots either, right? The Mishos Sarm in the beginning, the path of the righteous in the beginning, see the second page, the third page, he quotes from the prophets that we shouldn't be ka'anashim alamada. We shouldn't be just robots. We shouldn't just be people that are doing things out of rote, right? Oh, yeah, okay, it's 7, right? Like, you should know what you're doing, right? You're middle Shmanashe, right? What? Am I doing Maidim now? Am I doing the Baruch Atah? Right? Where am I? And we so many times we just do things like we're just row out of row. We sing to love, but do it. Right? We eat our matzah. Pesach's coming. We eat our matzah. We're leaning. We're not leaning. How much leaning? We get so into and right, and then we eat the matzah and the maror and the 4 cups but. There has to be the div libo. We have to lift our hearts. We have to have spirit. We have to have a lifted spirit. We have to be excited when we're doing our action. We have to be not just doing it out of because we have to do it, right? And because we're going to the Seder because otherwise I want to get my Afikoman present, and my Bubby and Zadie are not going to be happy, right? And that's what we're doing. Right, okay, Bubby, so I'm here, right? Okay, can I get my Afikoman present? Yeah, good, right? But that's not why we're doing it, right? And even if it's more, okay, it's a good gathering. We have to be excited about the mitzvah, and we have to lift up our hearts, And we have to have the spirit. When we're putting on our tefillin, we should know what we're doing and realize what the 7 things are. And okay, these are deeper thoughts, but at least I'm excited to do a mitzvah. I'm excited. I just put on tefillin with someone for the first time, and he was all excited about it. His excitement in the ear. I felt jealous, right? Because I also put on my tefillin all the time. There's an excitement, right? Imagine the first time you do something. There's excitement, and that's how we have to act our Judaism. That's what the Torah is telling us. When we give tzedakah, and when we help someone out, and when we put on our tefillin, and we make a blessing over food, and we light Friday night candles, and we make kiddush, and whatever it is that we do, shaking the lulav, Pesach's coming up, when we clean our house, and even when we clean our house, right? And when we eat the matzah, we have to have excitement. Thank you, Hashem, for allowing us to do these mitzvahs. Yes, we are an action-based thing because it changes the molecules of our body, and that's how we change ourselves into spiritual beings. But we also have to be excited about it. The Pesach shopping too. And also, every time the credit card is swiped, right? Even when we look at our bank accounts, no exciting! Yay! I mean, yeah. Right. But this is so important, because this is really the core of Judaism, right? Of course, we have to do the actions, but we have to do it out of excitement, and that's how we inspire the next generation. That's how we inspire other people. Because when we are doing it, right, I was just talking to someone. I was at a different bank, whatever. We're talking. It's a professional. The school was looking to do some things, and he said, "I'm Jewish." I said, "Okay, great, right, very nice." We talked for a few minutes, right? The wrong person to tell he's Jewish too, right? We got his phone number, of course, right? And somehow we're talking this and that about being inspired. He said, yeah, like I don't know, I got this enchanted from Judaism. I said, was it Hebrew school? He said, yeah, it was Hebrew school. Right, and it's not. So many people have told me that it's because there's no excitement. They're forced to go, and there's no. And not only that, they see the parents go somewhere else, and the parents don't have to be. And it's like the whole thing is just such a depressing. And Judaism is depressing, and it's forced upon. And then you're reminded about the Holocaust all the time. Which nothing wrong. Of course, we have to remember the Holocaust, but we are exciting and vibrant and alive. Right? We're an alive religion, or alive people. And we have to be excited about it. And we have to be motivated and make it geschmack, as the word is. Geschmack. Remember that word, geschmack. Right? Geschmack is great, awesome. Right, by our Pesach Seder, my mother, right, always she has all the different frogs and different animals, and it's become, even though like we're older, but the younger kids are into it, even older kids, like that's part of like the excitement, and and the other things, and we sing different things, and different people have different things that they do, but they have to make it exciting. You have to put the div libo and the rucho. You have to make things uplifted, not just yeah, okay, kids, why are you doing that, right? You have to make it exciting. And of course, when there's something going wrong, you have to, but in the right place, in the right time. Okay, let's move on. Next thing I want to talk about is actually on the same page, all right, down at the bottom. So it goes through all the different things, and then verse 27, out of nowhere, it says, "Vanashim," and the leaders, the rulers, the leaders of each tribe, Vanashim, Havi, Es Avnei, Shoam, right? The Nasim, the leaders of each tribe, brought the stones, the Sham stones, Es Avnei, Maluim, LaOfen, LaChoshen, right? They brought these special stones for the Ofen, the breastplate, and the Choshen, and for the Choshen, right? They're the ones that brought it, right? And then it says they brought the Besamim, also other things. So the Rashi quotes the Talmud that tells us, why is the Torah going out of its way to say, well, the Nasi brought it? Well, what was special about that? Everybody brought something, right? Why is it saying this? Oh, this is what the Nasi brought. The Rashi says this is actually not, this is being brought down not as a praise, but a backwards praise. The Torah doesn't want to talk in a negative way, but the Torah is teaching us something important. Now, why is it emphasizing that the Nesiim brought? Because the Nesiim, who were the wealthiest, right, of their tribe, they amongst themselves said, everybody, we want everybody to have a chance, but you know what? if whatever's left over, we'll cover. It's sort of like we'll cover. Every organization wants someone like that. If there's a deficit at the end of the month, we'll cover it. I'll take anybody that tells me that, right? Right. But that's just sort of the Nesiim was saying. We'll cover whatever the deficit is. But the Jewish people were so excited that there was no deficit. They've on the contrary, Moshe has to tell them Dayam. We find Moshe has to say stop. It's enough. He had to tell them to stop for brain. Right? I don't know any organization that has ever turned away a donor. Right? But Moshe Rabbeinu said, right, die, it's enough. So the Nesiim didn't know what to do. Right? They weren't involved at all. Imagine that. The building of the Mishkan, and they had no part in it. Right? So Hashem allowed them to find these Avnei Shoam and the Avnei things, and they brought the Avnei Shoam. They brought the special stones, right? and that's how they were part of it. But it's actually, this is brought down as a derogatory thing against the Nesiim because they waited. So the commentators want to know, like, what was wrong? Look at that. They offered to, okay, Baruch Hashem, the Jewish people were, very giving at the time, but they were willing to, fit the bill, whatever would have been extra, right? That's a worthy thing. So the commentators say that's true, but they should have still given something at the beginning. We'll give something, and then whatever is extra, right, we'll cover. But they did this way, two things. Number one, either they didn't have confidence in the Jewish people. That's not a leader. A leader cannot not have confidence in their people, right? They did not have confidence in Jewish people who were going to actually fulfill this. So therefore, we'll cover it. No. They should have shown the Jewish people were all. And then amongst themselves, if there will be extra, we'll cover it, right? But they should have been involved to show, yeah, of course they can do it. Of course, look, everybody motivate. Look, we're giving, and you should give, and everybody should give, right? But they didn't do that. That's number one. And that's an important lesson that, first of all, as leaders, as parents, as community people, we have to show the confidence. We can't be aloof. We can't say, no, we'll cover it. No, part of a campaign, helping cleaning up at the house. Right? You ask your kids to clean up for the table, you should be part of it to help clean up too also. We're all part of this together, right? We're doing this together. The other thing, right? The other thing is also, it's sort of, we tied in a little bit to what we're saying, but there's sort of a little like snobbiness of the Nesiim on their level. Of course, we have to understand on their level. We're talking about righteous people, right? But on their level, the Torah is telling us there's sort of a little snobbiness. Like, no, we don't have to be part. We'll cover it. We're good, and we're sort of, we don't have to be part of it. And again, that's a lack of humbleness, a little being a little arrogant. And that's a lack in the Nesiim, and they almost lost out not to be at all involved in the building of the Mishkan. Because of that, you think you're a little better, you think you're a little whatever, right? You could lose out almost everything, and that's not the proper way. And that's something that we have to learn from the Nesiim. Any questions or comments? Okay, so we're now going to jump to page 838. Why are we jumping to page 838? Very good. This week is the third of the 4 parashios. All right. We already did Shkalim. We spoke about Zachar. Right. And now it is Parshas Parah. Right, Parshas Parah, the red heifer, right, is read this week's parsha. It's going to be read at the mafter of this week, right? And again, it depends on the year, how it works out. This year works out the Shabbos after Purim, right? And then the last one is going to be Parshas Chodesh. So I want to talk a little bit about Parshas Parah, right? And then we'll end, and we'll take questions and answers. So, first of all, just a little background again. Why do we read Parshas Parah? The Shkalim we spoke about. We read Shkalim because we said that it was sort of a calling out, right? Because they collected the shekel. They have a shekel every year because they started the new Karbanos cycle the month of Nisan. As we spoke about, month of Nisan is the beginning of the Jewish calendar year. It's the first month, and that's when they started use the new money for the Karbanos, for the daily sacrifices. And therefore, they made an outcry and they started collecting money, sort of made a proclamation, right? They didn't have WhatsApp or things like that for it to go out, right? So they made it, and that's Parshas Skull, Parshas Zachar, and we also tied it into Purim a little bit, but I'm not getting into that right now, right? Parshas Zachar is a mitzvah in the Torah that we have to remember the wiping out of Amalek, what they did to us. And we do that before Purim, the Shabbos before Purim, because Haman was from Amalek, and the Purim story is connected to Amalek, and therefore we connect it to that. Why do we read Parshas Para? So that's the red heifer. What was the red heifer used for? The red heifer was used for, it was shechted, of course, and then it was burnt. The ashes were used to, was sprinkled on anybody that was impure from tumas mace or any other av, which is really only tumas mace, the impurity of, spiritual impurity of being in contact with a dead person. And it was used to purify them. The whole process, wait 7 days, be again, and that's what the part of the parsha goes through. We're not going to go into that. There's a whole process of how it was used, but that's what it was used for. So why is it done now? It's done now because it's a mitzvah. Every person has supposed to come up to Jerusalem and bring the Passover sacrifice. Now it can be done in groups, right? At the contrary, it's supposed to be done in groups, right? The Pesach sacrifice, right? But everybody's supposed to be part of it. What happens if you're impure? So it's sort of letting people know, hey, be aware, you need at least 2 weeks to a week and a half to sort of become pure from the tumas mace. So letting us know sort of a little ahead of time to make sure that you go up to Jerusalem and you get sprinkled by the red heifer, right, and go through the whole process that you are clean spiritually and that you're able to before Pesach in order to be able to bring the Karban Pesach. And that's a logistic of why it's red during this time of year. According to some opinions, it's also biblical. According to other opinions, it's rabbinical, right? But it's still important to do, be it rabbinical or biblical, right? You still have to do it, right? You're supposed to still have to read the Parshas Para during this time of year. So that's sort of just a little background about it. What are we supposed to learn? Now we're reading Parshas Para. What are some of the things we're supposed to learn from it? What are some of the things that we're supposed to? We don't have a Parah Aduma now, right? We're all impure. We all in some way interacted with someone dead, right? Either we were at the cemetery, we were at a funeral, right? Or Avatam is also spread by touch of someone else, even though we customarily wash our hands when we leave the cemetery, right? But that's just sort of just to sort of get the tumah off our fingers, but we still can't get rid of it. We sort of all have it, right? Right, but so it's really like, so okay, so we're just remembering, right? What are we supposed to take away from it? So a few things that I want to bring out that I think we could learn from, and I think we could connect to, right? Regarding one sort of reading through the Parshas Para again, why we read it now is because of that, but sort of different lessons that we could learn, we could take away. One thing I think is very important to remember, right? Parshas Para is the epitome of a chok. What is a chok? Right? A chok is a commandment that God gave us, but He did not reveal the reason. Right? So even Shlomo Melech was able to figure out with his wisdom, and as I said, other time we spoke about other choks. There's sort of some explanation, some certain Kabbalistic ideas. Sort of we don't have a clear-cut idea, but Para is sort of on the deepest level of a chok. Right? And even Shlomo Melech said that sort of he was not able to reveal the reason of Para Aduma. Right, the Talmud elaborates on this, and part of them is sort of it has to be red, and if there's a white here, there's 2 white hairs, it's no good. If there's 1 white hair, it is good. There's a whole back and forth. The whole idea of a red heifer, right, is sort of odd, and there's only a few of them throughout the times. The Talmud tells us only a few of them. Right, and then when you shecht it and you spray the ashes, that makes someone pure. But very interestingly, the person that's spraying the ashes, he becomes impure, right? So that he needs someone else to spray that. The whole, again, there's a lot of depth behind it, and certain things the Talmud expands on, and some things we can learn from. The whole idea of a red heifer is really a chok. It's from the deepest, from the most deepest, the wrong word, but from the strongest ones of a chok, of what really epitomized a chok, a mitzvah where God did not reveal the reason to it. And I think there's a tremendous lesson to learn, especially as we're going into Pesach and sort of ending the year, right? At least in the calendar year, right? That um, Pesach is a holiday that we sort of have a lot of. We understand most of the things in Pesach, right? We can understand that we were saved from Egypt, the 10 plagues, right? The Seder represents. We go through it. The maror is because of the bitter. The matzah is remembering what we ate there, or it's also freedom. It sort of has a dual purpose, right? The Passover sacrifice is, thanking God for saving us from the 10th plague. It's sort of it's a holiday which we can understand, right? What is Lebanon? Lebanon is represents the evil inclination, and we'll talk about that hopefully this Shabbos a little more in the class, right? But it sort of has a lot more. We can sort of okay, we understand this, right? But we have to remember that ultimately the reason why we do what we do is because Hashem told us to do it, not because it makes sense to us. We have to make it. We want it to make sense to us, and we spoke about it. That's the way that we could get excitement out of it, and that's the way that we could connect to it. But we have to remember that ultimately we're doing the service of God is because God asked us to do it. Right? And every generation of people that want to kill us, and God saved us. We're excited. Oh yeah, God saved us. But every generation of people that are out to kill us, and we don't always understand that. That's all from Hashem. We don't necessarily have to understand. And even what we think we do understand, of course we have to connect to it, but it's all from Hashem. And the mitzvah of Parah Adumah is telling us, right? And other chukim, but especially the Parah Adumah is telling us, is that we don't even comprehend a fraction of God. Right? We can't even comprehend a fraction of God. And therefore, right, just because we don't understand this mitzvah, we don't understand this thing, or this thing doesn't really resonate with me, right? I've heard that many times. Rabbi, this doesn't really resonate with me. I said, thank you. Right? Right? This doesn't really resonate with me. It doesn't really follow my feelings or what I believe, Rabbi. Right? But okay, very nice. I hear. We could talk about it, but at the end of the day, right? I believe in God, and God told me to do this, right? Okay, if you don't believe in God, I always thought, do you believe in God? Yes. Do you believe the Torah is true? Written by God? Yes. Okay, so now, doesn't resonate. Okay, so therefore what? Having stop signs at 2 o'clock in the morning doesn't resonate with me. I think there should be a rule that at 2 o'clock in the morning, right, there should be no stop signs, right, because no one's around. And if you see a car, so then just use your seichel. There's one car, so you stop, right, or whatever. But I think that we should not have stop signs at 2 o'clock in the morning. Bruce is agreeing with me, right? Of course, right? But if I go through a stop sign, I tell the cop, I said, this doesn't resonate with me, right? He's going to say, sorry, still giving you a ticket or off to jail, right? I don't know, right? Doesn't make a difference, right? Doesn't resonate with me, does not work, right, with what the rules are, right? So too, we have to realize that it doesn't resonate with me, or I don't feel it, or I don't understand it, or I need to get a little better understanding of it, and I really need to digest this, Rabbi, until I can really take this on, right? Do you believe in God? Do you believe God wrote the Torah? 1 + 1 is 2, right? So you have to believe. Now, again, we all have growth, and we all have process, and it does change a lot of things that we do. And I'm not taking away from that. We have to remember that. But logically, right, the mitzvah, the chok, is telling us we don't understand everything that God tells us. We don't have to understand everything that God tells us. We have to try to understand everything God tells us, right? But at the end of the day, God told us to do it. And that's important to remember always, but especially when we're getting to the holiday of Pesach, which sort of epitomizes things that we do understand and why we do this. And no, we are doing it because God told us to do it, right? And therefore, right, when we do it, we don't cut corners and we don't do this. Well, Dakar is getting a little long these days, so we're going to cut out the whole part of the passages of the sages and this and that. We'll just cut straight to the meal, right? We'll do the Makos and we'll do the Vihishamda, because it's a good song, and Avadaminu, right? And then we'll just go straight to the meal, and that's it. because the rest doesn't really, I don't even know what we're saying. So, okay, so learn it up. Go to a Seder that can explain it to you, right? Now, I'm not saying that you have to say every word, right? It depends on, you don't have to, but I'm just saying the concept, right? Even with the idea of resonating with you, part of it, right? We have to believe this, and this is an important lesson that the mitzvah, the chukim tell us, right? And something that we have to implement, in our daily lives, and to myself too, that just because it doesn't resonate with me, right, is not a reason why we don't do it, right? Let's be honest. We don't do it because we have desires, and it's hard, and it's hard to change our ways, and I really enjoy doing X, Y, and Z. And when we realize that, so then we have to say, okay, so Ezu Agibar, Kovis Yitzro, who's a strong person when whoever comes is evil inclination, because that's strength. And now we understand it better. It's not because it doesn't resonate, it's intellectual, it doesn't resonate with me, that's why I'm not doing it. No, it doesn't make a difference. You're not doing it because you're lazy. You're not doing it because you want to still eat in that restaurant. You're not doing it because it's cheaper to do it this way, right? Or it's hard to change my ways, which is a legitimate thing. It's hard to change the way we've been doing things for a long time. But that's why we have to be honest with ourselves. Right, and that only when we realize what the real reason is, right, then we can start overcoming ourselves and say, who's a strong person who overcomes his inclination? Because it is hard. The Torah is telling us it is hard. The Torah is telling that's what Torah. You're considered strong if you overcome evil inclination. Because it is hard to change your ways, and it is hard to do things differently than you've been doing your whole life, and it is hard not to hang out and be able to go out with your group of friends that you've been going out every Saturday night to, because you're not going to go out Saturday. Whatever it is hard. It is hard to pick yourself up and to move to a place where you don't have to drive on Shabbos anymore. And it is hard. These things they're hard, but we have to understand why we're not doing it. Right? And that's what one of the lessons the Paraduma is telling us, is that just because it doesn't resonate with me or other concepts like that, that's not a reason why we don't do things. So I just want to end with one more thing, and then we'll stop here. Right? The last thing I want to talk about is this one verse, a famous verse that's in Paraduma. If you turn the page to verse 14, it's after it goes through the whole thing, and it's sort of a recap. It says, "Zos Torah Sa'adam." Right? This is the Torah of man. Zos Torah Sa'adam ki yamas ba'ol. This is the Torah of man that dies in a tent. Right? Anybody that comes into the tent and anybody that's in the tent is impure for 7 days. Right? So it's a verse that is talking about the laws of impurity in a tent when there's a roof over, and I don't want to get into it. There's chapters and chapters of Talmudic discussion about this, right? But the commentaries all make a play on words, right? And it's very famous, this play on words, right? It says, Zos Torah Sa'adam, right? This is a Torah of Adam. Right, kiyamos ba'oel, that dies in an oel, doesn't mean to say that he literally dies, but he memis atzmo. Right, the Talmud says memis atzmo. He kills himself. It means to say he's dedicates himself. Ba'oel, in the oel. What is an oel? Yaakov Isha Olim. Yaakov's a man of tents. Yaakov was someone that learned Torah all the time. Oel represents the Oel Moed. Right? Oel represents the house of Torah. Right? Oel represents learning Torah. Right? So Adam ki yamas ba'oel. Those Torah sa Adam ki yamas ba'oel. This is the Torah. The way to acquire Torah is Adam yamas ba'oel. Man has to name his atzmo ba'oel Torah. He has to commit himself and willing to die. I don't mean literally die, but it takes sacrifice. It does. It takes sacrifice to learn Torah. It takes sacrifice to live a lifestyle of a Torah Jew. Right? I don't like the word Reform, Conservative, Orthodox. Right? Definitely not Orthodox. I like Torah Jew. Right? Someone that lives the life of a Torah Jew. It takes sacrifice. Adam Yamas Ba'oel. That's what it's telling us. You have to sacrifice yourself. right? You have to change your ways. You have to spend a little more money. You have to change what you're doing. You have to, whatever it is, right? It takes sacrifice, right? It does. It takes sacrifice. And that connects the two things that we said, right? First of all, we have to realize that paradum is a chok, right? The whole idea of impurity, of spiritual impurity is a chok. We just elaborate on that, what we're supposed to learn from that we can't make ourselves excuses. At the end of the day, we do it because God told us to do it. But at the same time, the Torah is telling us, we understand that you have to sacrifice. It's not easy. Life is not easy, right? It's much easier just to let things loose and not worry about Pesach and not worry about matzah's not cheap and kosher wine's not okay. You could get cheaper ones, right? First of all, financially, it's harder. It's more expensive. Logistic, taking off, especially on certain holidays, especially this year, it's not so bad. But other years, you have to keep on taking off work, right? And you have to this, and then you have to, sometimes you have to excuse yourself, and whatever it is, right? It is, you have to get on time for minyan, you have to buy kosher food, you have to remember to make blessings, you have to remember, I have to make a blessing, right? You have to think about it. We have to sacrifice, and sacrifice means to say our time, sacrifice our desires, right? Sacrifice some of our luxuries. We have to sacrifice. It is a sacrifice, and God recognizes that, and that's what He says, that's the way to grow, right? And those are the connection, the two things, but like just to connect everything together, but like what we said, when you do it with a smile, right? And you go to div libo, right? And we elevate our soul and we rucho and we elevate our ruach. It's not depressing. On the contrary, Judaism is the most beautiful thing because at the end of the day, when you care about something and you're excited about something, you're not looking at it as a sacrifice. You're looking at it as a growth. The same way someone that is on some crazy diet that don't eat this and don't eat that, someone's telling me, oh my gosh, I can't handle it, right? And they wake up every morning and they jog for 10 hours and they're also, and no, that's their lifestyle. It's okay, right? If they're excited, I can't do that, but they could do that because they're excited about it. They're motivated about it. They feel better about it. So when we live Judaism with a smile and realize that this is elevating us, that this is changing us, this is allowing us to get closer, so that we don't look at it as a sacrifice, and we realize that it's all from Hashem, and this is a way to build a relationship with Hashem, and it's exciting. Right? And it's really the greatest way, like we spoke about at the beginning of Adar, right? Really the greatest way to have the greatest simcha in life, right? Because you are doing something for a reason, you're connecting for a purpose, and you're not just living your life for your own physical desires, for your own physical needs, right? But you're doing it for a purpose, right? And therefore, even though it is a sacrifice, you don't feel it as a sacrifice. You feel excited about it. And that's the connection between everything that we spoke about today. Wishing everybody a good evening, and thanks for joining us.